My main argument when it comes to this video here is that She-Hulk should have been played by a bodybuilder, and that is basically it. I have nothing else to add. You can skip the video because this is basically going to be my main argument. Goodbye.
Poop funny. Woo! Yay! For poopy, good poopy.
No! God, please, no!
Welcome back to Torn Apart, and we are once again in this weird room, which is basically 4 white walls and just the random shit that I brought from home so they could look a little bit more nerdy. And here we are talking about She-Hulk, which is the last Disney Plus MCU series that we will be getting this year. And I'm already disappointed, and I've only seen 1 episode. There are a lot of things which I want to talk about when it comes to this episode here. By the way, this video is part of that series where I look at the very first or the first 2 episodes of an MCU series and I try to understand where it's heading, whether it is worth watching for normal fans, for people who don't give a shit about the MCU anymore, and for everybody else that kind of stands in the middle, whether it's worth watching for you, whether it's fun, and how to basically set up your expectations so that you're not disappointed, so that you have a good time. When it comes to She-Hulk, it's quite simple. Do you enjoy comedy? Do you enjoy a very sitcom-like, fourth wall-breaking kind of comedy as well? Did you like Pickle Rick? Even though I'm pretty sure that this series here will never go as crazy as Rick and Morty, but I'm talking about Pickle Rick mostly because the writer of that episode is actually the creator of the series itself.
I'm Pickle Rick! I'm Pickle Rick!
Yeah, about that. It's true. I am a Hulk.
And I'm talking about Jessica Gao, of course. And that is basically it. I have no idea how I should pitch She-Hulk besides that it's kind of wants to be a Daredevil without being dark and while having that kind of very bright and in-your-face feminism that we're used to getting when it comes to TV series these days.
If you want to go back to your life as a lawyer, I respect that.
Thanks. He doesn't mean that.
It's the kind of feminism that we got with Captain Marvel as well, meaning that we get a main character who is incredibly self-assured, who is 100% believing in herself and everything that she does, and that from the very first episode she believes that she knows everything that there is to know when it comes to being a Hulk. It is explained in some kind of way why she doesn't want to go through the training with her cousin Bruce Banner.
Pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult or might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
That is not really one of my main arguments because, as I said before, one of my main arguments is going to be the fact that these special effects are incredibly awful, and I wanted to talk about this because I found out that every single episode of She-Hulk cost $25 million to make. Let that thought sink in. $25 million. Just to give you a rough idea of what it actually means, we can have a look at other TV series, but even films that have used this kind of budget in better ways. Stranger Things is a very good example when it comes to the season 4. It had approximately a cost of $30 million per episode, and you can really see the quality there. There is not a single shot in that series that looks out of place when it comes to the texturing of all the different creatures, when it comes to the color palette that they tend to use, when it comes to all the camera work that they do as well, when it comes to the editing. Every single coin that they use for that show is really well spent. So you can compare it to that. You can compare it to House of the Dragon as well, which by now you've probably seen the first episode because this video is actually coming out a week after the release of the first episode of She-Hulk. But even by looking at the trailer, we can see that the money that went into that series was incredibly well spent, and it cost just under $20 million per episode when it comes to House of the Dragon, right? An example that maybe you don't think about is that an Italian movie, which is an historical action movie called Freaks Out, it came out this year, which had a budget of $12 million with no A-list stars, of course, an incredible production design, incredible special effects coming out of Italy as well. It's a country that doesn't really specialize on those kind of action movies and the kind of effects that we're used to seeing when it comes to even French or British action movies, or even German to a certain extent. Just to tell you that with $12 million, they were able to make a movie that lasts 144 minutes with incredible effects, incredible performances, writing, and everything that went with it. So that is the context. You know, when people are criticizing the She-Hulk look when it comes to the special effect, they're turning it into a misogynistic kind of argument. This is not what I want to do today, because as you probably have seen from the other videos that I've made, I tend to be on more of a feminist spectrum or of a leftist spectrum as well, and I'm disappointed as a fan, and I'm also disappointed as a part of a community that is called the bodybuilding community, because even if you look at the MCU itself, if you look at Captain America, for example, do you remember Captain America the First Avenger, the very first film that we got to see him in? They actually used special effects to make him look much thinner than he was in real life, right? Because those scenes were going to be part just of a small part of the film itself. And then once he got the serum in, the super soldier serum, and he transformed into Captain America, he was incredibly huge. And that was Chris Evans' work. All the bodybuilding that he did, all the workouts that he did, all the sacrifices that he did to look a specific way, to look like a superhero. So for me, it's very obvious when you already have within the MCU something that they've done within the past, they could have done it here as well. They could have chosen someone who was into bodybuilding and acting at the same time, used special effects, minimal special effect for the first pilot basically, and then she would have that kind of muscular figure across the entire series itself. It would have been incredibly easy, and it's already been done as well. Even if you look at Thor and Chris Hemsworth's portrayal, it's always been incredibly physical, and I feel like She-Hulk and Hulk as well are two characters that are incredibly physical. It's all about the physicality and the color. Those are the only two things I think that define Hulk and She-Hulk as characters. Maybe at She-Hulk she has a little bit more going on, but we have a look at that later. When it comes to the superheroes themselves, they're very muscular and they're green. That's the only things that you need to immediately recognize them and also anchor them within some kind of realism. The thing when it comes to the Hulk, if you look at the transformation of Bruce Banner and all the different special effects, we went from something that was very plastic looking in the movie from Ang Lee, for example, into something that became more and more realistic with Professor Hulk / Smart Hulk. And even within this first episode here, if you look at all the different texture that is going on when it comes to his skin, he's got hair, he's got follicles, he's got veins, of course, he's got beard, and everything that comes with its CGI appearance is realistic and is believable, despite the fact that he's incredibly huge. And then you look at She-Hulk and the way that she's been represented in just that one episode, but we know it's gonna go across all the different episodes because we've seen it in the trailer itself. There's not a lot of expression when it comes to the face. The muscles are almost non-existent at the end of the day. It is almost anti-feminist in the way that Disney doesn't want to portray strong women on TV. And when I mean strong, I mean muscularly strong. Of course, I know that this character here doesn't need the muscles to actually be interesting because she has her own personality, she has her own work, and she's defined by her work as well. But when it comes to the realism, when it comes to us actually believing that this character could exist and could be transported from comic to TV series, they really messed it up. If you look at the skin, it's just green without any texture. It looks very plasticky. It really reminds me of the Ang Lee time when it comes to Hulk. Even when it comes to her face, you can't really see the expressions. If you just look at her when she's shouting, for example, it really feels like someone who has been through plastic surgery, which is incredibly weird.
Do you normally use this chamber for, you psychopath?
No!
Of course, the hair is a straight out of comics kind of thing, so I don't think we can actually judge it for what it is, so we'll have to leave it alone. But it's such a missed opportunity when it comes to her look, when it comes to her physicality. And the thing is, you'll probably be sitting there thinking, well, Bruce Banner / Mark Ruffalo didn't work out that much to look like the Hulk, it's mostly CGI. I agree with that, but within the MCU, we've seen a lot of different characters who actually worked out, especially characters who are supposed to be imposing when it comes to their physicality. And She-Hulk is a character that is like 2 meters tall when she's fully transformed, so she's someone who has an imposing personality and intellect, but also physical strength. And I feel like it's something that is really missing when it comes to female superheroes as well, and it's a bit of a shame. If you look even at Captain Marvel, with Brie Larson's workouts and performance and work ethic, she was really into everything that went with the physicality that was demanded by the role. Even though she doesn't look incredibly muscular, she's incredibly athletic, and you could believe that she had those powers. This is the main thing when it comes to She-Hulk. I don't believe that those powers actually come from that body, while you do believe it with Hulk because of the just sheer amount of muscles. Of course, you can argue like movie magic, you can argue superhero magic, and you can argue that there are some characters who are incredibly lean and have incredibly super strength. Of course, I agree with that. But when you have a character that within the comics is incredibly muscular for a specific reason, then there is no purpose when you're adapting it not to do it as well. And I think it is a bit of an anti-feminist thing when it comes to portraying women and trying to make them still look sexy, mostly because muscles on women are not considered to be sexy, they're not really complying to the male gaze, and that's why they decided to go with the most smooth version of She-Hulk possible, which is stupid. And then of course they will try to catch everything up when it comes to the dialogues, when it comes to the writing itself, to make sure that you know that this is actually a feminist show, even though they preferred to do a sexy She-Hulk instead of doing an actually muscular and strong She-Hulk.
Oh, come on, where are you going? Let us keep you company.
We're just being friendly.
Yeah, where you going? So what, you too good to talk to us?
And if you want examples, I have a lot of examples because I follow a lot of the bodybuilding community and women within it as well. You can go to incredibly high performers, people who do competitions, but you don't have to go that high to find women who have an incredibly imposing figure. I follow a couple of people, for example, who would have made a better She-Hulk than Tatiana Maslany. And of course, I'm not criticizing necessarily her performance because I think her performance is actually good within the She-Hulk episode that we got last week. The main thing is that I think the physicality is definitely important, and it would have been an incredibly important stepping stone when it comes to portraying different body shapes when it comes to women, because at the end of the day, even when she transforms, she's still perfectly within the beauty standards of the male gaze, and I find that it's kind of disrespectful. And it's kind of interesting how now every single person who is criticizing She-Hulk is being treated like a misogynist, and everyone else is completely looking over any possible criticism for the show itself, because it is the very first feminist TV show that Disney Plus has put on its service, even though it's completely stupid in my opinion. If you just look at Miss Marvel, for example, are you forgetting about all the really good, excellent representation that came out just like a month ago within Miss Marvel? It feels like people have really short memory when it comes to women's characters in the MCU or just in general. But there have been really strong characters within the MCU as well, and this series here is not a first. Even if you look at WandaVision, for example, she was the main character of that series, because even Vision was just a representation of her own grief. It wasn't actually a character. It was just the idea, the illusion that she created of the person that he loved in real life. So at the end of the day, that series as well was an incredibly strong feminist piece of work when you think about it, through certain aspects, of course. Let's not go too insane about it, right?
Yeah, about that. It's true. I am a Hulk. And I'm guessing you're not going to be able to focus on this fun lawyer show until you know all about that, so let me get you up to speed.
Now that I've addressed this kind of aspect here, I actually want to move forward. I wanted to address it as fast as possible because this is one of the main things that was really clicking at the back of my head for months and months and months, because I wanted this show to actually work. She has a lot of interesting relations to superpowered beings, superpowered villains, to Daredevil, of course, and she has that kind of fourth wall breaking that can be interesting. Apparently they were inspired a lot by the TV show Fleabag, which is one of my favorite TV shows ever.
What?
What?
She wrote.
She... He's a bit annoying, actually.
What is that?
What?
That thing that you're doing, it's like you disappear.
What?
What are you not telling me?
Nothing.
Tell me what's going on underneath
Nothing.
there. Tell me, come on,
No.
tell me.
Nothing.
Ah,
Nothing.
what are you doing?
No, stop being so churchy.
I'm not being churchy, I'm just trying to get to know you.
Well, I don't want that.
And I can see that, even though I think they should exploit the fourth wall breaking a lot more. The problem that I have with this pilot here is that it's kind of like an anti-pilot because it is not surprising at all. It is basically telling the origin story of this character here in the most predictable way possible. I was expecting basically for her to get her power through a blood transfusion, but at the end of the day there is this car accident which is caused by a spaceship, and she gets the powers because she doesn't even get injured within the accident itself. And basically as she's exiting the car, she gets a cut on her arm, and then Bruce's blood actually goes on her arm, and that's how she gets the Hulk basically treatment, which is kind of stupid at the end of the day. I feel like they could have done something more emotional, and it would have been incredibly easy to like ground, for example, this series into something way more traumatizing. For example, the idea that after the car accident she lost so much blood that the only way for her to survive would have been for Bruce to actually give him his blood. It would have been his choice, and it would have actually been something interesting for his character as well in the future to deal with, and it would have created a really strong bond in between them. As it is, it's an accident. It is an accident that the spaceship was there. It's an accident that the car went down like that. It's an accident that the blood went into her veins. It's nobody's choice at the end of the day.
Inhibitor. Jen, get away from me. I'm bleeding. Get away.
There is a lot of time in this episode here spent in between Hulk and She-Hulk butting head against each other, and basically he has a hard time noticing that his cousin has a way easier time basically dealing with the transformation and the powers and everything else than he did across his entire life. Which is okay at the end of the day because people are very different. Men and women are very different when it comes to dealing with traumas, when it comes to dealing with having power. And I did really like the explanations when it comes to she's someone who's already has her life figured out, meaning that she doesn't want the superhero life at all. All she wants to do is go back to being her normal self. And it makes sense for Hulk, for Bruce Banner to actually stop her and be like, something incredibly bad could happen, just you have to be careful. You have no idea how much power you actually have in you. And then of course there is this scene which is really long where they're fighting each other, but of course there are no stakes because we know that they're not really going to try to kill each other, they're just playing around, and it lasts for a really long time. And it is very obvious that it's there to show how powerful she is right from the start when she got her powers, and how basically she's already overcome that kind of teacher-student relationship. I feel like that scene could have been interesting in a post-credit scene. It's that kind of thing where Flash and Superman go on a run together to figure out who is the fastest. It's that kind of thing, you know, it's an interesting joke, but it took way too much time away from the main core of the series itself. I watched the first episode and I have no idea who the villain is. I have no idea what's going to be happening in the next few episodes. If you just look at the final minutes of this episode, for example, the main villain of the series is presented. It's Jameela Jamil, and she gets her ass kicked in literally just one punch, and it's edited in the worst way possible. I couldn't even understand what was going on in the background while the two main characters were actually discussing, and she was like, I cannot Hulk out right now, it's incredibly weird, I shouldn't do it. Jameela was at the background just kind of fighting everyone but not really fighting at the same time. It was incredibly awkward.
Who the hell are you? Jennifer Walters, attorney at law.
And that's basically how the episode ends, and everyone is aware that She-Hulk exists and that she can transform very easily from one form to the next, and the main villain is presented as well, but we have no idea exactly what her role is. I don't know. I really don't know when it comes to this series here. I feel like it could be fun, but I feel like it could have been way better. Could have been way better, and the fixer was incredibly easy. Because now every single time that I look at this series here, I will not really believe that she exists within it, because if you compare it to the comics, it just doesn't work. And on its own, yeah, I'm kind of having a hard time right now when it comes to the Disney Plus MCU series. They all have the same tone, they all have the same jokes. Of course, it is good that they're trying to put more women's directors, more women characters out there and leading their own stories. For example, at the end of the day, I really liked Miss Marvel. And I said it in my last video as well, even though not a lot of people watched it, unfortunately. I really loved her portrayal. I really loved the performances in that show and all the representation going for it. When it comes to this show here, I know there is going to be a lot of interesting cameos. I know that Tim Roth is coming back as Abomination. Benedict Wong is coming back as the Sorcerer Supreme. Charlie Cox apparently is coming back for a cameo as Daredevil, even though I have no idea how he's gonna be appearing, because there are not actually any shots of him yet. We don't know whether he's gonna be appearing in full costume or just as a lawyer. I'm pretty sure he's just gonna be appearing as a lawyer in some kind of way, and it's gonna be like an interesting wink wink like they did in Far From Home, and I'm disappointed. I feel like I overlooked a lot of things that I wanted to talk about when it comes just to the overall look at this series here. First of all, it's gonna be 9 episodes, in case you didn't know. As I said before, it was created by Jessica Gao, but unfortunately she will be directing only 3 episodes. And this is something that I've talked about across all the different shows within the MCU that I've reviewed. This series here will have 7 directors. 7 directors for 9 episodes, which is insane. It's insane for a TV show of this caliber here. For a mini series like that, it probably will not have a second season, or maybe it will lead to another weird spin-off like they keep doing with Echo, they keep doing with other stuff as well, like Agatha Harkness. And of course, as I said in previous videos, very often the best MCU Disney Plus shows are the ones that are created by one person, directed by another, so that basically the overall look and style of the show is really clear. You've got Loki, you've got WandaVision, and I don't think many other shows have done it. I think Miss Marvel had maybe 2-3 different directors, but you couldn't really tell when it comes to the visual style. I think it was really coherent, and with this show here, it's kind of problematic. And maybe it will go more towards the kind of sitcom comedic route, which can be interesting, but at the end of the day, the comedy within the MCU is actually the thing that I hate the most recently.
This ends here and now!
Whoa! It's the thing that I really didn't like when it comes to Far From Home and all the different interpretations of memes when it comes to Spider-Man, when it comes to the Green Goblin as well. The humor wasn't good in Moon Knight as well. It was incredibly pathetic how they turned such an incredibly interesting dark series into such a joke. And even when it comes to Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, I'm pretty sure that if it was even darker, like Sam Raimi does once in a while, it would have been even better. Anyways, having said that, just look for example in my review of Thor Love and Thunder. That film was 100% destroyed by the comedy and just the amount of jokes that they wanted to stuff in, and at the end of the day minimize the emotional stakes and journey of every single character within the film itself. So I'm not gonna enjoy the sitcom comedy thing when it comes to the MCU series, because they are not really known for that. They are known right now for really good casting, good special effects, but not anymore when it comes to the series, and they are known for creating interesting stylistic universes and actually giving directors the leeway to do it. And within the series, sometimes they do it and sometimes they don't. One series is going to be incredibly interesting and feel really new. Another one is going to be a blend of the two. And another one is just going to be fun, sit your ass down and just look at this and have a laugh, like Aoki was a couple of months ago as well. Of course, I'm not saying that this episode was bad or that the series is necessarily gonna be bad, but it kind of lingers on that unknown mediocrity that the MCU is kind of specializing on when you think about it. It's not good, it's not bad, it's meh. You can't criticize it fully, you can't praise it that much, but at the end of the day, you don't really know what to say.
Little punk!
Just dividing people into different camps. They keep pushing these kind of weird mentalities where if you don't like this show, you're like this. If you don't like this show, you're like this. If you example, when it comes to Miss Marvel, if you don't like this show, you're racist. If you don't like She-Hulk, for example, you're a misogynist, you're a sexist, and you just don't really like the way that women are represented within superhero media, etc., etc. Basically, it's something that I wrote on Twitter as well. This is recreating once again the dynamic that we had with Captain Marvel, where people are just criticizing it without actually having seen it, but actually some people are criticizing the things that are wrong within the series itself. It's just that they're not necessarily using the good arguments for it. When it comes to the special effects, for example, the special effects are bad, and Disney as a company apparently has been treating all the SFX people like shit. So I want to stress this. This is not the SFX artists' fault. This is Disney Marvel's fault. They keep rushing things because they want to deliver one content after the other so that we keep talking and discussing about the MCU for as long as possible. For example, people have been criticizing quite a lot the current phase of the MCU, seeing that phase 1 was so much better, having a lot of nostalgia when it comes to the past, for example, but phase 4 is way more interesting than phase 1 ever was. I even saw some tweets of people being like, phase 1 had the best cinematography. What the fuck are you even talking about? Like, if you just look at the Iron Man movies, for example, they had the most bland cinematography ever. It didn't look like anything interesting at all. Even though the first film is incredibly cool because it looks like an indie film at the end of the day, the two other ones, they look like a mess. They look like Transformer movies at the end of the day, especially if you compare it to the standard that we have today when it comes to blockbuster movies. Even if you look at Guardians of the Galaxy, if you look at Thor Ragnarok as well, if you look even at the color palette and all the black and white thing that they did in Thor Love and Thunder, even if you look at Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, I'm pretty sure that those ones have more interesting shots and cinematographies than everything that was going on with phase 1. So people who write that kind of stuff, you're blinded by nostalgia. But basically what I'm saying is that it creates a lot of noise, these kind of discussions, right? And I feel like we're kind of losing touch with reality when it comes to actually criticizing a show for just the show that it is, and we keep thinking of what it should be. And I'm of course guilty of that as well. But at the end of the day, as I said at the beginning of this video, if you look at the budget, if you look at the castings and the choices that I've done in the past, for example, just think about Lou Ferrigno playing the Hulk back in the 80s, 90s, if I'm not mistaken. He was a bodybuilder, he looked incredibly buff. So it is being done in the past, using people with those kind of incredibly physical bodies to make sure that we believe that they could be superheroes. And I find that it's a weird double standard that we do it with men but we don't do it with women. So it is not egalitarian at all. We should hold everyone to the same standard, and if you want to be a superhero, you should act the part as well. Just look at Dwayne Johnson playing Black Adam. He looks incredibly cool. Look at Superman as well. Look at Henry Cavill's Superman. Look at Ben Affleck when he was playing Batman as well. He was incredibly buff as well, and he looked like a superhero. He looked like Batman. Even if you look at Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, it's not one of my favorite movies ever, but she had an incredible strong presence within the screen itself, and I believed for every single second that she was in those frames that she was Wonder Woman and she had that kind of power. And I don't really believe it when it comes to She-Hulk, and I feel like it's a mix and match of different reasons. It's not just the special effects, it's just that it could have been better. And I will always criticize things, especially if they could have been better, especially if Disney/Marvel are being lazy and feeding us these kind of shows which are just not up to the standards of today's shows. Those are the thoughts that I had when it comes to She-Hulk. Of course I will be watching it, because what else could I watch? I'm definitely not gonna watch all the different shorts starring Groot. There's no one who is gonna force me into watching I Am Groot. I will literally grow myself another head instead of watching I Am Groot. So I'm stuck with She-Hulk for now until I start talking about Lord of the Rings, which will be in a couple of weeks, don't worry. I'll probably do the same thing that I did with this series here. Let me know what you thought of She-Hulk. Let me know if you loved it, if you liked it, if you have high expectations or low expectations, if you agree with me when it comes to the special effects for the specific reasons I talked about. I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Every single like that you drop will go to the SFX artists working for Disney Marvel. They deserve all the amount of love and praise possible because they've been working like crazy, and I'm pretty sure that they're not paid well enough for the amount of hours that they work for us, viewers, sitting at home watching their work on the smallest screens possible. I'm Patrick, and this is Torn Apart.
What the fuck?
Aren't you agree we're not letting him in, right?
Yeah, of course not. I mean, did you see the guy? I mean, compared to him, we're just a couple of chumps. No way. Why would he even want to join the team?
By the looks of him, Thor assumes it is for thy dental.
How are we getting out of this, tin can? I don't want to make him mad.
I'll figure something out. Just follow my lead. All right, Hulk, come back in.
Does Hulk have a job?
Yep. Welcome to the team, Hulk.
What are you?
Just shut up.